I'm here with Chad Hartigan, and we're going to be talking about Little Fish, which I had the pleasure of viewing today, actually, in the early hours of this morning. And I have to say, for me, it's one of the most exciting films. It could not have come at a more poignant time in the world. And I'm very excited. Chad, welcome.
Thank you.
And let's kick off. The first question I'm going to ask you is, what started your film career? You know, were you in Cyprus thinking of film, or did you leave and then?
I think I loved film as a kid, and I think that's probably because television options were slim. I mean, television, we had like 4 channels and they were in Greek.
Yeah.
And so I just watched movies, and that was the main form of entertainment. So I loved movies, and then I initially fell in love with acting, where I thought I wanted to be an actor and be in movies. And in high school, so we moved to Virginia when we moved to the States. And so I did high school in Virginia and started doing theater. And I loved theater and acting. And but always in my mind, I wanted to be an actor in films, not the stage. So when it came time to go to college, going to like theater school didn't interest me because I thought it would be a lot of, you know,
Shifting scenery and
avant-garde, pretending to be animals and stuff. So I went to film school and fell in love with filmmaking at film school, and knew over the course of those 4 years that would be my focus instead of acting.
I think it's really important to have experienced being an actor as well as for directing purposes, because you're in the skin of the actor in a much more intense way, I think, you know. So it always helps.
It helps to have the empathy for what they're giving you and what they're going
Absolutely, through. Yeah. I mean, what you've done with these performances is incredible. I felt the chemistry between Emma and Jude was just so beautiful and so poetic. And how did you work with them in allowing that chemistry to build?
Well, we did not have a lot of rehearsal time.
Really?
I think they both showed up in Vancouver, where we shot, about a week before we started shooting. Uh-huh. And so there was some time. I mean, a lot of that was them. They have to do their costumes, they have to do all that stuff, but we got a little bit of time. But it was mainly to just read the script together and talk about it. We never got down to actually rehearsing scenes. It was more just, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the relationship. Let's talk about the stakes. Let's talk about what is going on in each of these scenes. And actually made a few changes within that week with their input. And I could just tell, though, in that 1 week that they had an instant mutual respect, and they had never worked together before, but were fans of each other. And you could just tell that they were going to be able to really gel on screen. So I do remember that in the scheduling of the movie, we had no choice but to film all of this stuff in their house, in their apartment first. And that would not have been my choice, because it's a lot of the more intimate stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a testament to them that on day one, we started with them being in the height of their emotional stuff, and then they just nailed it.
Wow, they really did. I mean, it's I know the films had comparisons, you know, to other films of that kind of, but for me, having just recently watched Normal People,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was an incredible, you know, chemistry between, it just made me realize just the importance of having 2 actors that really have that level of chemistry, and especially when you have this kind of story where someone's fading and you're losing them.
Yeah.
I've got to touch on the fact that this film was made before anyone knew what was coming.
Yeah.
How did you feel when you realized around March that you'd made a film that was the first film that will land right during a pandemic?
Mixed feelings, to be honest. And this is actually the first time I'm talking about it. This is our first sort of public Q&A and screenings and stuff. So I wish I was doing the Q&A with the people watching, because I'm so curious how it plays. It must play much differently than we ever imagined or intended. But at the same time, I felt such a connection to the script when I first read it, because I related to the feeling that the world was sort of crumbling around me, and there's bad news every day when you wake up, and the sort of suffocation of despair that comes with what's going on in the world. And so I used that to try and build or to find the emotional connection for me, because my girlfriend was pregnant at the time that I read the script, and we made the movie with our first child. So in my personal life, in my macro world, that was bursting with love and joy and excitement. But then in the world at large, whenever I allowed it to, when I peeked out at the world at large, it was very, very grim. And so I related to that and felt like if I could capture that in the movie, that there would be other people that felt the same way. And now everybody feels that way. So it's I'm very curious. I'm very curious myself, because I've only watched it once since the pandemic hit. We finished the movie in February, and then I didn't watch it for a long time while all this was going on, and finally I had to when we did the final QC check. And yeah, it's a very strange experience.
I mean, it is watching it, and the line that struck me was, "When your disaster is everyone's disaster, how do you grieve?" I mean, the strap line of this pandemic is, "We're all in this together." It's exactly the parallels uncanny. And watching it, you kind of do think, my God, certain scenes are the masks when he's going in for I mean, it's just uncanny that you touched on these things.
Yeah, I have a text chain with producers and the writer, and every few days something would happen in the news, and I would text them and be like, "This is insane." And there's a few things that we actually cut out of the movie in editing, because we thought that maybe they were a little too much or too unbelievable, that of course have turned out to be far less intense than some of the real life stuff.
Well, the test, everyone was panicking about the test because it went up your nose.
Yeah.
Come on, it's just so. I mean, you're sitting on this extraordinary film now. I know IFC, I've boarded, and it's very exciting. What are the plans? I mean, because you're in this kind of strange world where cinemas now are closed. What is the plan? Is there
Well, the plan is to release the movie in February, and it will be available on demand for sure. And then if theaters are open, it will play in some theaters. IFC has been releasing movies pretty consistently throughout all of this, and they've been doing a really good job of tailoring each one to figuring out how to adapt to these new circumstances. So it's going to come out around Valentine's Day. And I'm curious. I think in some ways now's the perfect time to watch a movie like this, because the message is love is what we have to get through impossible circumstances. And on the other hand, maybe it's the worst time to release a movie like this. I don't know. I mean, but I do think that when this is over, which I hope is soon, I can imagine there being a reluctance to want to go back and revisit things that remind us of this time.
But there is a level of nostalgia with this film, a beautiful nostalgia that comes from a relationship that's so intimate and so genuine. And I think that will give this film a different perspective than just being a pandemic movie. It is at the end of the day a romantic, most definitely a romantic story and it harks back to any problem that someone has with age, whether it's obviously Alzheimer's would be the closest, I suppose, to just generally health decline. That we see.
And even before the pandemic hit, when it was a movie that we were talking about, I always viewed it as a romance first and foremost, and then there's these science fiction elements that are backdrop, and I still feel that way. The pandemic is backdrop, and it is a romance first and foremost, and I think it's probably, if people do connect to it when they watch it now, I think they'll connect to the fact that the characters in it behave in such a way where the science fiction is backdrop, and it's about people focusing on just getting through a day at a time, and ignoring the outside world as much as possible until they have no choice but to deal with it.
Yeah, one of the most for me, one of the most beautiful scenes is beautiful and painful is the scene when she's with that sweet puppy. And it actually, actually brought a tear to my eye because it's so genuinely real. What made you figure that into the story, and why? And there are, there's the scene with the mouse or that looks her right in the eyes. The animals are kind of almost speaking to her. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the script is based on a short story, and in the short story, Emma was a vet, and there was this great detail about how people are forgetting that they have pets, or that where their pets go, or leaving their gates open and all, and it's causing there to just be a flood of orphan animals, and that is such a great cinematic image and quick way to just show what's going on in the world without having to. What I liked about the script and the challenge of the movie was to illustrate what's going on in the world at large, but with intimate scenes. So I would never pull back and show you a real wide shot of the city and how it's being manipulated, or we don't rely too much on news. It's mainly just what the characters interact with in their own lives is how you piece together what's going on. And her being a vet and there being this horrible obligation to have to deal with too many stray dogs was I think great writing in the first place. And then obviously it is an emotional thing for people to watch.
Totally. So did you find the short story? How did it find its way to you?
I didn't. The screenwriter did. He found it and got in touch with the author, and they hit it off. And there was other interest from other people in her short story as well, but he sort of won her over with this approach of being, this is a story about a relationship, and the science fiction is backdrop, because there were many different ways you could have taken her material and made it bigger. So then he wrote it, and the company that produced it, that partnered with him to produce it, sent it to me, and I read it, and I really liked it. But initially I was working on another film, and so I said I couldn't engage with it. And then 6 months later, I think they had another director on it who dropped off, and the thing I was working on fell apart. And so we reconnected, and from there it moved very, very quickly. Like that was probably in December, and we were shooting it in March.
Wow. So how long was the shoot?
It was 6 weeks.
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah,
it was quick. It was a quick shoot.
And where did you shoot?
We shot in Vancouver.
In Vancouver.
And some in Seattle, which is where the movie takes place.
Were there any real challenges in directing this that you hadn't foreseen?
Well, it's my first time directing a movie that I didn't write. And so there are challenges that come with that. As a writer, I'm used to spending a few years with the material before anyone else cares about it. And by the time we're shooting, I've lived with it for so long that a lot of my confidence as a director comes from being the person that knows the material best. Each film I've made has been bigger than the last. And so I'm walking into experiences I've never had before, but I'm always confident that I at least know the material better than anyone else. And that's why I'm the director. With this, there's another person that knows the material better than me at first. And so it's kind of a race, or not a race, but it's a sprint to get to the point where I do know it better than him and have taken over that position and can be the real authority for all the decisions that need to be made. So the speed at which that happened is so different from when you write it. And that was fun. That was a fun challenge about it.
Yeah.
And then Jack and Olivia are both amazing actors, and they do have amazing chemistry in the movie, but they have very different styles of acting. And it was my first time really having two co-leads that are coming with very different styles and just trying to find the way to meld them together. So that was fun as well.
Was Emma in the original story, was she British?
I think no. In the original story, neither of them were British, but in the screenplay, immediately she was, because I think Mattson wrote it for her in mind, with her in mind.
Right.
And she said, I've never been able to do my real accent in a movie before, and I want this part to be British. So this was her first time getting to use a real accent.
It's such a brilliant performance by both. And I also want to talk about another aspect of the film that really struck me was the score. I think the score is absolutely such a part of the journey. And it was Keegan DeWitt.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about the score, because that really does figure.
Keegan is one of my best friends. I've known him for 20 years, and he's done the music for all of my films. And so I get him involved immediately. As soon as I know I'm making the movie and there's a script, he reads the script and he can start to get some ideas. And throughout the shooting and when we start editing, he just sends stuff. He sends folders. And so he never scores to scenes. He never scores to picture. He just sends pieces, and then we start to mess with them and put them in here, put them there, and then we're like, oh, this is beautiful. This really works for this. So then he knows that he'll shape it after that to fit the picture exactly. But he's a genius that works from like a purely emotional and intellectual place, where he knows what the movie's about. He knows, he's read it. He's seen some of the footage that we've shot, and then he just works from there. And I agree. I mean, the score is fantastic because it really feels like, in some ways, a traditional classic orchestral romantic theme, but it's filtered through this kind of strange instrumentation, and it does feel very nostalgic and very fractured, that fit the story.
I mean, congratulations, and I'm so glad it's landed with IFC. I couldn't think of a better place for it to be.
Yeah.
So obviously you're going to be in this strange place. I wish you every luck with this. I think the timing is extraordinary. There will be a lot of pandemic type movies, but I think they will be shot in a certain way that doesn't have the breadth and the color of this film. I think this has landed at the right time. I think audiences will love it. I'm excited to know what your plan is next. Where are you heading next?
Well, I love this movie too, but because it's so emotional and melancholy in a lot of ways, I found myself in the things I'm writing now are moving in the more comedic direction. So I think the next one's probably going to be a comedy.
Excellent.
Which is, those comedies are also sort of the ones that I've been leaning on more at home watching these past few months. I've sort of been rewatching old favorites like The Birdcage and just, really entertaining farces. So I might try my hand at that.
Excellent. I look forward to seeing that, and wish you every success with the film. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for your time, and
thanks for this and for the festival giving us a shot.
absolutely.